Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to, I guess this is going to be season 3 of the Good Flight podcast. I had a baby over the last basically 3 weeks to a
Hello.
month, all of that sort of stuff. So it's been really tricky to think about and be available for a long, 2-hour recording such as this. So if
And
I
it's a
fell asleep-
boy.
It is a boy. Yeah. His name is James, James Theo Dredd, aka James T. Nurk.
Dude,
much like James T. Kirk, which we think is pretty cool.
that's a badass name. That kid is
right?
badass.
Yeah, he's got so many options for nicknames. He could be the captain. He could be Theo, Teddy, Jim, James, Jimmer.
Little Nurk.
Yeah, Nurk. I mean, it's the possibilities are endless. So I think we really set him up for success or to be bullied in high school. One of the two. But we are back at it. We're really excited to be bringing a whole new lineup, a whole new exciting group of guests, one of which tonight, Mr. John is going to introduce to us.
Yeah, season 3. This is like video game seasons, it's not like doesn't have to correspond with like this, like every year goes by or something like that. We're just bringing out the new content. It's like Apex Legends or something. New season, new content, new weapons. Here we go. And today we're actually venturing a little bit outside of our comfort zone a little bit here. Okay, this guy still flies. He flies some really big birds. You might see him over the skies of New York City, most likely. You might see him down in Tampa Bay filming some stuff for the Super Bowl. This guy is one of the just little tiny shoots. One of the best aerial cinematographers in the country. He specializes in helicopter work. Mike Isler from Gotham Films. Everybody, welcome, Mike.
Thank you. It's Isler. We'll go with the Isler, but that's all good. I guess you didn't do your homework. No worries there. I'll let that one slide.
Do you go by the Iceman?
Oh God, don't start that.
Okay, all right, that's good. We'll just call you Maverick then.
I grew up with all the Top Gun jokes.
Nice.
I was also never good at my homework, but yeah, my apologies, Mike Isler.
Pleasure to be here.
You can be my wingman anytime. We're super excited. So we're bringing you to the Good Flight podcast. The whole goal of this show is to highlight the kind of behind the scenes, the positive stories of, I guess, primarily for the drone industry, but I guess we'll just expand it to the aerial filming industry. Just because we know that there's so much effort and love and passion that goes into, I guess, aviation of all kinds. And we see these amazing shots in movies and in commercials and shows, but we don't know, what went into it. And so the whole goal of this show is to kind of find those little silver linings, pull out those opportunities, and give you a chance to kind of to shine, not just as a camera operator, but as a human and as someone that does some cool shit.
It's so much fun to talk about this stuff, and it's so much fun to do this also. These are the kind of jobs that people dream about getting paid to do, and people like the three of us, we're just so fortunate to be able to have fun for a living.
100% agree.
Yeah, and I guess a little cliff note. I guess I wasn't clear, but Mike also is one hell of a drone operator too. So he knows his language around the drone space too. So in fact, that was one of the recent projects you just told me you were working on, right? Was a drone shoot?
Yeah, I just wrapped up a week-long drone shoot, traveling around a couple smaller cities on the East Coast in Tennessee, Virginia, and Pennsylvania for a Fortune 500 company, doing a 30-second spot in each city, highlighting some various things there. And with COVID requirements, they had very interesting filming limitations. So I was basically a solo unit capturing B-roll in these different towns. We had two other camera operators in the towns at the same time, and we weren't allowed to share a meal together or share a car together, even acknowledge that we were in the same towns as these people. So COVID has kind of turned everything upside down in the filming industry, top to bottom.
Yeah, how many times have you been tested, you guys?
It's
like per gig, it's like how many times per week?
That's it. It's at least weekly.
That's my flex too. It's like I've been tested twice today.
So with Gotham, are you guys doing full service, or are you focusing on the aerial industry specifically?
So it's full service aerial filming, but we don't do a whole lot beyond aerial at the moment. We're starting to expand into doing some terrestrial filming. We do have a built up BMW that we can mount our shot over to, roof mount, front mount, back mount, and we may be starting to dabble in the arm car world pretty soon.
Yeah.
That might not have been
That's fun. That's
public
fun.
yet, but that's a consideration. It's starting to happen.
If you need, just give a shout out to Winston. A good flight exclusive.
Yeah, what is it about like the adrenaline behind, that type of work that you like? Like what, you know what I mean? Like it couldn't just be, oh, we can also put our shot over on a tripod. No, you have to be able to like be pushing the limits here, like to some degree. What's up with that?
Well, the three of us are all in the business of moving a camera, really, when you think about it. And it's just the drone or the car or the helicopter or the plane or boat, whatever it might be. It's just a vehicle to get the camera from A to B.
Yeah, a couple are a little bit more expensive than the other. Let's talk to me through about your bird. How many helicopters do you guys have? I want to know all about it. So,
I love the idea of plural helicopters. It's not just what are you flying? It's how many Yeah, I love it.
So we've bring us to the hangar here.
Yeah, we've got one helicopter in house at the moment. It's a A-Star B3 Plus. And it's basically your top of the line, most powerful filming helicopter that's available. It's sort of a industry standard for flying gimbals. And that's what you'll find all the top aerial cinematographers working with around the world is the A-Star. That's the type of helicopter that's been landed on the top of Mount Everest. So it's an incredibly powerful platform.
Jeez.
It's versatile. And it's actually a single engine helicopter. We did have a twin engine helicopter that our company sold, I guess it was last year, and purchased this one because the twin engine helicopters, you gain redundancy, but you lose overall power because you're carrying around two separate sets of systems for those engines. And by going to a single, you gain a lot of performance. So the performance gives you payload options. It gives you fuel. It lets you take another person on board if you need to, a director or an AD, something like that. So the A-Star is really the best tool for us.
That seats 5 then at that point?
It can seat 2 in the front, so you got a pilot and then a passenger up front, and you can technically do 4 across the back. So you could do 6. They also have some modified ones that can seat 7 used for tours. But generally when we're filming, we fly with a crew of 3.
And then where do you typically sit? What's your position? What's your role, in the company as well as like what's your role in the helicopter? What's your role on set?
Sure. So I'm head of production at Gotham. I do bidding on jobs. I do the technical side, pre-production on the projects, as well as building out our payloads. So I'm hands-on with the camera package, hands-on with the gimbal, getting everything tuned, installed, set up to client specs, mounted on the helicopter, and then we get a sign-off from a FAA-approved mechanic for anything that gets mounted or unmounted from the helicopter. So that's another consideration we deal with is the legality aspect of it all. And then I fly, and I'm operating.
That's for every shoot. That's that FAA. That FAA representative. Is it only when you're doing different stuff, or is it essentially part of your workflow every shoot? Like
so, an FAA-approved mechanic, someone who has what's called an A&P certification, airframe and power plant certification, can do a sign-off on the equipment that gets mounted or removed from the helicopter. And anytime you do that, you're using tools, bolts, that sort of thing on an aircraft. It needs to be rubber stamped. And you're also affecting the weight and balance of the helicopter. And that's something we deal with in drones as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And is part of the process or in dealing with that, like how do you account for all of the, myriad different pieces that go into that process? Like how do you keep track of all that? Like for our listeners, like, that you want to be part of the filming industry, like what's the way to keep all of that stuff in your mind, to keep it all fresh, to be on top of it no matter what?
Shadow someone for a long time and then do it. Just stay in it. And, I keep my face down in the manuals. I'm always, reading up on service bulletins that come out for the equipment, any new piece of hardware that comes out, a revision of the mount, have new camera packages that come out that interface with the gimbal differently. You're controlling them differently, different recording limitations. Every tool has its pluses and minuses. And so you really have to stay up to speed on what the right tool for the job is.
So, and ultimately, sometimes you might get these directors that are flying these crazy lenses, or these maybe these prototype lenses that are totally giving you a challenge. I just saw you guys flew a massive lens. It was this thing, I don't know, what it was, like 30 pounds or something. It was before it was released.
Yeah.
What is it like getting handed or being challenged with putting a lens that's really not meant to be flown in the air, let alone filming the stuff you guys are shooting with it?
Yeah, those are the fun projects where you've got to get your hands dirty and figure it out. If it all goes together really easy, it's boring and you're not really getting a whole lot of a mental challenge there. So that was with the new Ingenuity 24-290 Ultra, which has a option for the rear element of the lens you can change out to make it a full frame lens. And the reason we needed that was because we were flying the Sony Venice, and that's the latest, hottest full frame cinema camera from Sony. So this Ingenue lens, it's I think $110,000 lens that we're going to mate with this $60,000, $70,000 Sony. It hadn't, to my knowledge, been put together
on a shot over.
Yeah, on a shot over that we're going to fly over New York City. And the beauty of this camera, the Sony Venice, is it's amazing in low light. So we really wanted to push this thing to its limits over New York City late in the evening. And we put this whole package together, used every piece in the shot over kit to get this thing to fit, space it out. And we're talking, millimeters to spare without things bumping into each other. Got it tuned and balanced, right. And it was amazing seeing this thing fly that it hadn't been flown before. So those are the ones that are really enriching. You feel good about them
when you're doing things for the first time. When you're kind of going out, you're getting your hands dirty, you're being the first to do it. Like, what is the most rewarding part of that, and how do you communicate that passion to your clients, to your fans, essentially, all of the above?
It's a good question. Oftentimes the clients have these unrelated pieces of equipment or these technical needs, and they just say, oh yeah, just make it work. And they don't understand the nuances behind getting these dissimilar products to either fit together or to communicate electronically, or really just to deliver the end product that in their mind seems very simple. So you don't always get a lot of appreciation from the clients on those sort of things. It's more just in the groups of these technical people like us that appreciate what goes into it, that you can really beam about what you did.
Awesome. And in the face of people not recognizing that, how do you celebrate success?
that's
a lot of beer, baby. Cheers.
Cheers, gents.
8 hours bottled to throttle. Cheers.
Is it 8 hours on the 107 side?
It is, yeah. What is it on the helicopter side?
Hopefully more than 8 hours.
I think we've got 12 hours for commercial flights. We operate under Part 91, which is still, it's not for charter rules, which would be under 135. But under 91, when you're doing commercial operations, I think it's 12 hours. But I sit in the back of the helicopter. I don't fly the thing in the front, so I don't need to be quite as well versed on the
refrigerator
back.
You're
in the back, just all right, we're a little bit rough on the pan this time around.
Yeah,
just hit a shot quick. Okay, here we go. Nice and smooth. Little liquid expo.
Yeah, it's like a limousine back there, dude. It's like none of the rules apply. You just be hanging out.
Roll up the partition.
It's got the mood lighting around the side.
That's pretty cool. I would love to go for a ride on that thing. It's like I've been in a helicopter over New York once, and it was a fantastic experience. I can't imagine, essentially being in total control of that helicopter and being able to do exactly what you want to do. With your experience, it's got to be an exhilarating.
It's amazing,
feeling.
But it's also disorienting in a way when you're familiar with this. Both you guys are, that FPV flying, you're face down in it the whole time. And so when you're operating the camera in the back, the helicopter is flying not always in a straight and level path. So the helicopter may be trying to arc around something real tight, real low to the ground, real close, pulling some G's in a turn. And you're face down in the monitor. feeling that, but the image is doing totally different things, and that's a bit disorienting at times. So that's what really takes some getting used to.
Paul, we don't feel anything when we do this other than just a little pucker, pucker factor.
I feel joy, passion.
You don't feel the G's though, brother.
No, I don't. I wish I would. I'm glad I don't, because I honestly, I would get sick to my stomach. Like if somebody said, okay, stare at this monitor in the back of this camera car or in a helicopter or a jet or something like that, I'd just be like, no, I'm gonna get sick immediately, and we're gonna miss the shot. It's just not gonna happen.
Well, the other tough part is our gimbal moves around. We can pan in any direction, we can tilt freely, as opposed to FPV, where that the direction your camera's facing is the direction your drone is going to be going, or hopefully at least most of the time. So when we're doing these moves that I'm looking backward with the gimbal in a tilt move, and the helicopter's doing one thing and the image is doing the other, that's rough. And we've had directors get sick in the helicopter because they're face down watching a shot, and they're not used to that, getting all tweaked.
Barf bags, huh? You guys have them tucked away?
Absolutely.
They just have the door open.
You don't want that, because you learn pretty quickly from the slipstream, it just blows right back in.
Oh, no.
Oh, my gosh. I can only imagine just the chaos that would ensue. What do you do after that? You just wrap it? All right, guys, we're done for the day.
You get the shot.
You at least break for lunch. Maybe not lunch.
There's a question for you. What is the worst, incident that's happened in? I'm not saying bodily incident that's happened inside of the helicopter that is on a scale of from
who shit themselves,
really bad fart to vomiting all over the pilot's eyes.
Yeah. And we want names, okay, Mike? All right, no
names.
The gas.
We learned our lesson on names, John.
Many times. The gas happens often when you're doing high altitude flights and you go from sea level up to 7,000 feet. All the bodily things change pretty quickly, and sometimes even with the windows open or the door open in the helicopter, God, it can linger pretty bad. But in terms of things worse than that, I've also had the good fortune to work on a lot of projects for Delta Airlines. So I've done camera operating from the back of a Learjet in formation with airliners for those projects. And that's also kind of the same feeling where you're face down in a monitor and this plane is going all over the place like that. And I've had the director throw up a couple times, just fill up a big little garbage bag full of puke in there. It happens.
Looking great, Mike. That's why you can't do it. You can't operate on a hangover. The hangover just makes it even worse. It's I wouldn't. Forget it.
You just got to believe that they are genuinely excited about the shot and not just being like, oh, that looks.
Well, if you're throwing up, it means that the pilot's doing something right. They're pushing it to the limit.
Yeah, man, that's what I'm talking about.
Tell us about that Learjet experience. I wasn't even anticipating that. We all travel a lot, and every flight you see these immaculate big budget videos about how to buckle your seatbelt and shit. Is that what you're talking about? Is that what you're making?
Yeah, so I've worked on some of those. They use some of the video content on the not just in the safety video, but they have a lead up montage to the safety video, and they use this content on the website. They use stills whenever you see a plane flying in front of a mountain or beautiful glints of light. Almost all of those, at least for the client that I've worked with Delta, are produced for real, and there are some other clients that do this with CGI. But Delta's gone out and filmed that legit. So we've done the Airbus A350, the 767, the 737-900 ER, and what was the last airframe that we did for that? That was the A330-300. So 4 different airframes that we've done with them. And we've also done some really interesting things with them where Delta wanted a close-up shot of the belly of the plane because they started this new thing where they're painting the Delta wording, the Delta word mark on the belly of the plane. And other airlines had done that in the past. Emirates had that for a while, but Delta just started to do that. So they wanted to show it off. So how do you get really close to the belly of a plane while it's taking off to really show that? The trouble is, if you park your camera at the end of the runway, the plane takes off about halfway or 2/3 of the way down the runway. And by the time it gets to the end, it's 500 feet in the air. So the way that we solved that was we took a shot over F1, mounted it to the back of a Porsche 911 Turbo S. We closed down an airport to do this. We did this in Mojave, and we had an Airbus A330, which is a twin-aisle airliner that seats about 350 people. And that was speeding down the runway with this Porsche right in front of it, holding the center line on the runway. And the Porsche got up to about 180 miles an hour on that shot. And so we have this beautiful shot right up close of the A330. Camera tilts back, and the plane's taking off right over the top as we're doing the zoom pull out to wide. It's pretty incredible to do things like that. And, it takes a lot of logistics behind that also.
So cool. I can't imagine. I mean, just the logistics of like getting a Airbus to take off has to be, let alone in a controlled environment with a car on the runway, trying to get a shot, organizing everybody, controlling all the speeds. Like, that's unbelievably cool.
Yeah, it was quite something.
And the shot over did okay with being going 180 miles an hour.
It did. Yeah, it did.
Because normally the helicopters are more like a $120 at
yeah, that's about right. Like that. The shot over can hold up to about 200 knots, give or take. So that's 230 miles an hour. And then they also have a more modified shot over F1 called the F1 Rush that has higher torque, lower speed motors, and that can do up to 350 knots. And there are a handful of platforms that are flying that right now. There are two L-39 former Czechoslovakian trainer fighter jets that have shot overs mounted to it. And I think a couple other planes that are doing that. So they can do high-speed air-to-air, one of which was used on Top Gun 2, should be coming out pretty soon.
We won't say who it is, but yeah, that's amazing.
That's sick. Winston just put a little clip, a photo in our chat, just of it's a beautiful shot of you guys in this car in the desert.
That's it.
Such a tiny car compared to such a massive plane. That's insane. You guys are nuts. Were you in the trunk of that thing filming it as you were doing it? Where were you? Like, how were you positioned in this car?
So,
were you scared for your life? Tell me.
So that one took an incredible amount of legal and insurance planning to get this to be approved by the client when they're going to risk putting a $200 million plane in front of something. And if the car has a malfunction, not only are they going to cause some damage to the plane, but it's going to kill some people. So the way that we did this is with the 911 Turbo S and a shot over on it, there's not a whole lot of room for anyone but the driver and maybe one person in the passenger seat if you wanted to go that route. But what we did was set up the shot over to be totally controlled over RF from another vehicle that was going parallel down a taxiway, and that had the whole camera crew in it. You've got AC pulling focus, camera operator, director, and an AD that's calling out all the safety calls on that. So we were able to remove everyone from the Porsche except for the precision driver. And the guy that was driving the Porsche, his name is Roger Richmond, and he's a precision driver out of LA. He drove for The Italian Job and all sorts of other big movies.
Nice.
And this one was a rather straightforward one for him. It's basically go right down the white line in the middle as fast as you can.
Yeah. Yeah. I know this is not like a relevant question at all, but what was the other pursuit car that had 4 people? I'm kind of curious about that.
Sure, that was a Cayenne.
How did they keep up with the Porsche 911 Turbo?
Was it a Teamster driving that one?
Okay, nice.
Actually,
that's a great question.
Not a Teamster driver on that one. No, that was brought out from, I think, Filmotechnic or Pursuit,
Okay.
One of the two big armed car companies in Los Angeles.
Yeah.
Yeah. Ooh, I want to go into the Teamsters so bad right now, but you know what? I'm not. In case one's listening, I don't want to die. So, yeah. Anyway,
your house.
I got a question. If you have Delta as a client, do you automatically get diamond status for the following year?
God, I wish.
I
wish.
Right.
Luckily, I do have diamond status right now, but that was
I figured.
But in seat miles. And I think I'm going to.
I was hoping that there would be some extra perks. You got to put that in the contract next time.
Well, actually, the Learjet pilot who flew a lot of the air-to-air stuff on the Delta projects, at the end of one of the Delta jobs, he was traveling somewhere else. for a different client, and he checked in with Delta, and they let him know that he had 360 status, which is that secret tier that's above Diamond and is invitation only, and you have to spend gobs and gobs of money, and it doesn't even matter how many miles you fly; it's how much money you spend with Delta to get that tier. And he doesn't spend that kind of money, and he doesn't fly those kind of miles. And we don't really know for sure, but
he's got a Learjet.
Yeah, we think someone made the call and said, we enjoyed working with you on this past one. Here, just enjoy this for the next year.
Dang, that's
360
cool.
status. That's like what Casey Neistat has.
It's like the concierge key stuff.
I don't know.
Out of up in the air.
That's badass. That's really cool.
Super cool.
Yeah, Delta's been a lot of fun to work with. I've worked through this company, Beam Imagination, that's out of Atlanta, and they've got Delta as their client, and they've been able to bring me on all these various projects. We've shot a lot of things on the ground for them. I've done 360 cameras through all their operations facilities and maintenance facilities, as well as these different air-to-air things. Mm-hmm. And also when we do the air-to-air projects, we use helicopters on them too, because it's not all about flying formation with a jet. So with the helicopter, we do all these up-close shots of the plane taxiing around and even taking off. We've done opposing shots where the plane's coming right at us, and we fly right over the top of the plane as it's either taking off or landing, and there's very little margin for error. So on Delta, when you get on the plane and the seat back displays turn on, I don't know if you're a Delta flyer, United, or American, or who you fly with.
I am actually, yeah. I'm platinum for 2021.
Oh, hell yeah.
Yeah, right?
So when you get on the plane and the little seatback monitor lights up, there's a photograph that comes up of like a sunset, and there's a plane down low that's kind of coming toward the camera. That was shot out of the side of a helicopter outside of Seattle. And the way that was set up was the helicopter was pretty much in a hover. And you've got this airliner that's just barreling at it, coming maybe 100 feet below it. And the door's open and a guy's out the side snapping pictures with an SLR. And it's legit. It's done for real. So yeah, I've got iPhone video somewhere of my perspective as this thing just comes roaring past.
Oh my gosh. What does that feel like? Like, that's got to be absolutely insane. Because relative to a 737, a 747, being in a helicopter is like, I'm just in a little toy. Like, that thing just comes.
You're putting total trust in everybody. Like? It's really pretty wild. You hope that no one's deviating from what they're doing. You hope you don't have an engine failure, and that's going to put you in the path of that plane. Everyone briefs for all.
Is that a nervous moment, or is that exhilarating, or do you just have absolute confidence, or some of all of them?
It's exhilarating because you know that things can go wrong, but you hope that you've planned enough that if things do go wrong, it's handled in the way that you planned it. But there's always the oh shit factor. Right. Things can always go wrong, but you kind of put your trust and your faith in the system at that point.
Trust and faith in the system. That's all it really kind of takes at the end of the day. Sometimes it's just to just kind of get through the job, essentially, right? Because these stressful moments when you're on set, even when it comes down to getting a shot, it's trusting your instincts to get you through that day.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's the same on the drone side as well. You do all this prep, and you get all the equipment set up, you run through everything, you do dry runs on it, you have so many briefs with the client, with all the different teams that are working on different aspects of it, and you feel like you've done everything you can do to make sure things go right, but you never really know until you've done it. So it's all we can do.
At least done something, maybe it's not exactly what they wanted, but it's something. And what I always say as kind of a joke, it's kind of my process after a really stressful shoot. I'm I just want to get out of here with my head on my shoulders.
That's it.
But literally, Mike, when you're in the back of a helicopter, are there moments where you actually are sweating in the back? I'm glad I got out of this thing alive. Does that happen to you? Because your body is there. Your body is on the line. Okay. We're flying through trees and stuff. And tell us about, you said you've had a couple of scares. What's that like?
Yeah, I've had a couple of scares. I guess I could talk a little bit about, how I got into all this and different things that led up to what I'm doing now.
Please. Yeah.
So going way, way back, I had an interest in aviation when I was a kid. My grandfather was a pilot, but he stopped flying before I was born. I think it's still got my blood somehow. And I had an interest in RC helicopters way back when. So I had a was it a Nexus 32 nitro copter way back in the day.
Nice.
Was that like early 90s or something like that?
It was 32. That's like 32 millimeter blades or something. So like, you know,
engine
a decent
size. It was a
size,
30
right?
class.
Is that what that means? Oh,
Do you mind
engine
if I
size.
ask? Do you mind if I ask how old you are?
Yeah, I'm 38.
He's 18 years old.
38. Okay.
Yeah, born in 82.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So cool.
Yeah, so things were, different
Crushing
with the
it.
copters way back then too. And 3D was something that really wasn't that big back then, and it was, all you could do to get these things to fly straight and level. And the gyros on board were much worse than we have now, and we had no GPS holds and any of that kind of nonsense. None of that existed. It just left this nice white trail.
Fly bar.
Yeah, exactly.
Fly bar.
Teetering rotor head.
Yeah.
Absolutely. That's it.
It's like control, and you had an actual physical line going to it, right? Yeah.
Not quite that old.
It's funny, Paul, how many people we talk to that have a background flying RC helis, isn't it? Isn't that? I mean, that's how I got started. I don't want to, I guess I'll remind everybody that some of the first things I was flying was...
This whole show is about you, John.
Thank you. Finally. No, but yeah, no, I mean, it's just like, there's a common thread there. These RC helis, Paul, come on.
Absolutely.
I didn't get that chance growing up. I never did any RC, so I'm
buy me a helicopter.
Like, genuinely a noob to all of this. But so you got started flying a Nebula.
Yeah, and I enjoyed flying the Nexus 30. That was great, and I had my fair share of crashes with those little things. And actually, it was a pretty good size. It was like a 3-foot rotor span on that. And then I started taking flying lessons with a Cessna. And I started taking flying lessons when I was 15. And I remember I wasn't old enough to drive a car at that point. So when I didn't have a ride to the airport some other way, I was taking a taxi to the airport to go fly a plane. So I worked my way through flying lessons and started and stopped a whole bunch of times. And I didn't actually finish getting my private pilot certificate until I graduated college. But I always had this bit of aviation in my blood. And at the same time, I was getting interested in photography. And I shot wakeboarding. I did a lot of wakeboarding photography growing up in Orlando. Worked for some of the big magazines, boat companies, board companies, all that sort of thing. Ended up going to college to study commercial photography at a school called Brooks in California that actually just closed a couple of years ago. Okay. But I started to build this background in photography and just learning about the visual medium, learning about all the technical side of cameras and getting really in depth with things, doing hand processing of large format film, that sort of thing. But I also had this bit of aviation in my blood. And when I graduated college, I took an internship with a photographer in New York by the name of Vincent LaFerre. Vincent was well known for aerial photography. And he did a lot of still work out of helicopters. He had worked for the New York Times for a long time. And whenever they needed an aerial photograph of a new building being built or something like that, they called him up and he would shoot. So he got to do a lot of that. And eventually he was hired to do aerial photography directly for other companies. So I took this internship with him and I had this aviation itch and I had this background in photography. And finally things started to merge a little bit for me. So I was his assistant. I would be behind him in the helicopter, changing lenses, getting his harness secured, doing flight planning because I had this background in aviation. I understood weather. I understood limitations of aircraft. And I could read charts, sectionals, that sort of thing. So I understood airspace a bit. So I could help him out in that regard. And I worked with him for, probably 15 years or so. I still do a lot of different projects for him. And after maybe 10 years of working for him, we had a project that was for CNN covering the 2016 presidential election. CNN wanted aerial footage of New York City at night during the election because the results were being projected on the side of the Empire State Building as the results came in. And that hadn't been done before.
That's cool.
And CNN, being a national station...
You're like a teenager or like 20 years old at this time?
Well, this was 2016.
Like 20... I'm trying to do the math.
Yeah. So that... I was 30, 32 at the time, I guess. Or 33 at the time, rather.
Try to do the math. -5 equals, there. Yeah, got it.
So
Just stick to flying drones.
Yeah. It was an interesting project that they're doing these projections on there. And CNN didn't have any helicopters because they're a national news station, not a local station. It's every like small market, not small market, but every local news station has a helicopter that covers New York City or Los Angeles or San Francisco, whatever. But CNN didn't. So we had to basically set up an existing helicopter to do broadcast work, which is a whole different thing where the director in the control room can talk to you and we can send a live feed via microwave wherever. And I hadn't done a whole lot of work in the shot over side, or at least with broadcast gear like that before. And so that was this first job that really got me involved in that world with the New York team that basically brought me into Gotham. So it was through this introduction with Vincent, who I'd been working with for a long time, landed this project. He called up the right people in New York. We ended up working with one guy who later, was growing the company at Gotham and ended up bringing me on. And been working with them for a long time now.
That's great, man. You guys are crushing it. Absolutely, guys. Check out Gotham Films on Instagram and just all over. Just Google it. Some amazing stuff to get you an idea of some of the toys that they're playing with on a daily basis. It's really, really inspirational. Really cool stuff.
Thank you.
Out of all of the stories that you've told so many awesome things already, but like, are there any like moments or shots or sessions that stand out as some of like just the coolest moments of your career with Gotham or otherwise?
Yeah, a little session.
Done some pretty interesting things over the years. I did a project. Winston, I might have to go over this with you later, but we did a project with a company in Los Angeles. I'll keep that under wraps. Johnny, I'm sure you know the guys. Guy named over there leads things up. And they were working for a large governmental organization that wanted to capture video over certain sites in Los Angeles with a visible light camera as well as two different thermal cameras, all pointed at the same thing. And then they could take this stuff into a computer and compare the thermal imagery with the visible imagery. And also, because of the way that we were flying in certain flight paths orbiting right over the top of these features, they could take that video and extract 3D models, as well as extract 3D models with thermal information as sort of a test.
Like real time, or are these like this is all back end?
It's back end processing on the video, but they basically brought us in to do this 3-camera setup with these two strange thermal payloads flying at night over Los Angeles. And it's absolutely wild just seeing through the eyes of thermal. And you see these little points of white lighting up in the distance where you wouldn't expect there to be anything, flying over refineries, and things look just like a sea of random lights to the eye. But on the thermal picture, you see like one tank, one piece of equipment is just like glowing white hot with this white flame coming out the top. And visible light, you don't see anything. It's just like this super hot steam ejecting from it. And they never really told us exactly what they wanted to do with that footage and what the test was really for, but it's certainly an interesting project. Had my fair share of those. We've flown.
It was surprising then, like.
Sorry, go ahead.
Like it was like a higher resolution than you expected at the thermal level, like to where you're just like, that's more detail than I expected.
There's a lot of secrets, Yeah.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
And some of the gear that we were using is export controlled. So if you want to take that outside the U.S., you actually have to talk to the U.S. government about that and get clearance, because it can be used for weapons equipment. But we've done some interesting things. I worked on a project where we've flown an iPhone in a shot over before for Apple.
What?
So that was interesting, where you've got this big $400,000 gimbal mounted on a $2 million helicopter, all to fly an iPhone. So that was an interesting one. I've also done other projects.
Did you like have like a lens mount for it too, where it was?
Didn't even have anything like that. It was just a naked, normal iPhone in a custom built holder to hold it up there. So that was pretty wild.
That's
but
amazing.
Other projects for Apple that
So
I've
you
had
didn't have any counterweights? And
tons of counterweight in the back. Yeah, but the trouble is the whole package was still too light. So the results were not exactly what we were hoping to get out of it. And I think it worked for stills, but the video, we ran into a problem where you've got a camera with a stabilized lens element in it that the lens element kind of floats, and then you've got the shot over also trying to do its own stabilization. They fight each other. So that was a little bit difficult. Yeah, but in that sort of same vein with Apple, worked on another project for them where we did a high altitude flight over an area in New York City where the street grid sort of has an interesting diagonal in Queens. And Apple wanted that shot so that they could take that nighttime video of this street grid and then superimpose it on a microchip shot. And in their keynote presentation for launch of the iPad Pro, it's this street grid where cars are moving and the cars turn into electrons and you zoom out and it's a microchip. So interesting stuff like that where I get to work on Apple keynotes. I think I've worked on maybe 3 or 4 of those. If you're running macOS Catalina, I was on the shoot for the background, the desktop background. That also involved a shot over as well, because it's an interesting thing on the Macs where when the Mac kicks into night mode, you're looking at the exact same picture, but at a different time of day. And that picture for Catalina was shot offshore of an island that's 20 something miles offshore of Los Angeles. And it's pretty much pixel to pixel in the exact same spot night and day. And that's a very logistically difficult thing to do with the helicopter. You can never really get back to the exact same point in space.
Did you see the video of the guys recreating that shot?
I did. Yeah, it was fantastic.
I don't know why. That. Okay, I don't know why I saw it or how big it was, but
they were like hiking for 2 days and
trespassing and like took a drone. Yeah,
it was a blast. And
crazy.
It was really
that's super cool that you saw that. Then
yeah.
Awesome. That's super cool. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, John.
No problem. That kind of begs the question, Mike. Okay, let's get into it a little bit here. Okay, so if only there was a tool that could hover in space at an exact GPS coordinate remotely to to trigger a photo or something like that. Drones versus helicopters. Here we go, baby. This is like what I want to get into here. All right, this is the meat. This is why
John's got a bone to pick.
Horses for courses.
Was that a drone shot, Mike?
That was definitely not a drone shot. And maybe it could have been done with a drone, but it would have been much more difficult to do with a drone, would have been probably a lot more creatively limiting with a drone. Drones are great.
Okay. Why?
I love them, but you've got different limitations where you've got flight time limitations due to battery usage. You also have live transmission issues where if you're, for example, that shot was shot on 150 megapixel phase 1 camera. You can't effectively send 150 megapixel images to the ground all the time while you're flying. You're going to send a 1080 feed and you're going to make a judgment off of that. Well, that's not good enough for a lot of these kind of things. When you're doing pixel level corrections with things like that, it just doesn't quite work. And then the other thing that's a really big part of it all is that when you're looking through the camera on a drone, you see what the camera sees. But when you're in the helicopter, you lift your head up and you see everything around the outside. You've got this surround vision that you might notice something you didn't see otherwise. And it doesn't work that way with a drone. You don't get that same sense of being there. So with a drone, you get hyper-focused on one thing, and then you might tilt the camera up and look around and see what else you see. But it's really like looking through a toilet paper tube. You don't have this sensory experience. And that's such a huge part of aerial filming. You might notice, hey, if we take the helicopter around and we look at it from this way, it's going to look totally different. And of course, you can do that with a drone, but you're not going to instinctively feel that just the same.
That's really cool. I wasn't expecting, I guess, that type of response. I was very curious to see, your perspective on the situation, considering you fly helicopters and drones.
Well, I fly in the back of helicopters. To clarify, I don't pilot the helicopter, but certainly spend a lot of time in them.
Have you tried?
I have actually. Yeah, it's a blast. It's a ton of fun. It's very challenging because I don't want to tell you how these things work because you guys know well, but any one control input affects the other control inputs. And so it's something that if you lift up on the collective, you're demanding more power from the rotor system. And since you're asking for more power, it's putting more torque against the helicopter. And that means you're counteracting it with, pedal to put more tail rotor input. And then the tail rotor input is going to cause you to drift a little bit. And so you're inputting some cyclic to counter the drift. And it's this whole, since you're putting in cyclic to counter the drift, that takes more power. So you start to sink a little bit, like all these little things happening at once. So it really is like trying to stand on a basketball and juggle at the same time. But as far as, helicopters versus drones, like we could go deep dive down that. And I hope we do over the course of the evening. Like there are so many differences and also so many areas of overlap that it's impossible to say, which one's better. And there certainly are situations where either one is just fine. They complement each other or neither's the right tool for the job. We've certainly had that. There have been plenty of projects where, people say, oh, let's just go bring out a drone and do it. No, that's not really the best way to solve it. How about you just go get a 40-foot boom lift and just park it there? And then you take all the airspace issues or you take wind out of the equation, or you can put whatever camera you want. Yep. There are so many ways to skin the cat.
I'd say that my job is talking people out of using drones for shots. Honestly, like half the time it's just like, yeah, we could do that with an FPV, especially FPV. I don't typically do too many like aerial, or standard. What's the right word? Cinema drones.
I don't know, Paul. You're a drone racing league world champion. God damn it!
But I come in. I'm just like, hey, how about we just use a gimbal because we could have a nicer camera, more stable, and not have to use post production to make it look good. What? Why would we do that? We have a drone here. I'm like, well, it's not the answer.
Because it's 3 feet off the ground and you want to fly through a doorway and around this guy's desk. And
well, yeah, we could do that, but that's not what they're asking me to do. They're like, here, fly straight down a dock. Like, okay, why don't we just do that with a gimbal?
Yeah, I was on a project a couple months ago where we're filming, I think it was for HBO, and they've got this set of a building built inside a soundstage. And they wanted shots of this building inside the soundstage filmed with a drone. They wanted shots, pushing in through the doors of this building and that kind of thing. And we went out there with an Inspire 2 and filmed some of that. And it was ultimately unsuccessful. It didn't look that great for what, they wanted. And they wanted this kind of level of precision and this level of feel. And we're flying in a GPS denied environment in there, flying everything in ADI mode in a confined space. Yeah. And it's something that would have just.
So we said we should have brought out John Graham.
We should
get Nurk out there with the Cinewhoop, baby.
No, they should have brought the other half of your team and just brought a techno crane out there. The whole thing that.
Yeah, that's true. I guess
it could have all been done with a crane, done really well, done really smoothly, repeatably, with less safety issues, more stability, more choice in camera. But no, someone got in their mind, let's do this with a drone. And for what they paid, they probably could have had a crane team come in and do it. And it was stupid.
Yeah, we just had a conversation today with the shoot, and it was a conversation. Is this a crane shot or is this a drone shot? Just today. And, it's like fire drill, boom. They wanted to fly a Sony Venice, which is the big camera that everyone wants to fly. It's heavy. So in order for us to fly that, we need an ultralight drone, which we have with small batteries, blah, blah, blah. It would have required us like 2 days of prepping and testing to make sure we could do this for a shoot next week with some type of small anamorphic lens. At the end of the day, they decided it was ultimately a crane shot. You know what I mean? So it's like, but we're in these conversations with directors and producers and people that are paying the bill to say, hey, what is the right decision here? And I got to give it to them a lot. There is some overlap. There is a lot of overlap there, potentially too, with factors that you might not know until you're there on the day, like weather and things like that, which taken a huge consideration with flying machines.
Sure.
So, it's not easy. Mike, how has that overlap changed in the last, few years with drone technology changing and things like that? Your definition of a helicopter shot or a drone shot, how has it changed? And not only that, where do you see it like changing in the future?
That's a good question. It's interesting because uniquely in New York, we're isolated to some degree from a lot of the drone industry because of the various legalities of operating there. And it actually changed a good deal several weeks ago when the administration changed, and that removed some flight restrictions in the New York City area.
Yeah, the TFR, yep.
That's right. That magically disappeared. So that might change what happens for drone operations in New York City. Things are already getting a little bit looser. But because of New York City's own restrictions in the aviation law, and I know you're familiar with all that side of things, it's very difficult to legally do a drone job in New York City, even if it's technically very simple to do. So we've been, isolated.
Yeah, I want to give our listeners like a quick background in like the legal ramifications of flying a drone in New York. So Flying Monster, our company, we are just outside of New York. We're based in New Jersey, but we call ourselves a New York-based drone company, okay? Here's the law, because I know a lot of people out there, especially in the hobbyist world, don't know the law, especially when it comes to New York City. So you cannot legally fly a drone in any of the 5 boroughs, or at least you can't get a film permit to do so. It all stems back to this thing called the aviation law, which goes back to, I think it's like the 1940s or something, Mike, right? The 1940s, when this guy, like Jimmy Fitzpatrick or something, Jimmy Fitz, let's just call him Jimmy Fitz, stole a plane from, I think it was Teterboro Airport. He was drinking at a bar, and he bet that he couldn't get from Jersey to back to the bar in like 15 minutes, and took the bet, went to Jersey, stole a plane, landed the plane in like uptown New York or something like that on the street, and so won the bet. He got his money. That's pretty awesome, right?
And I think he did it again a week later.
Yeah, I think it was like a year later. He did it again. He was drinking at a bar and told somebody this story, and they didn't believe him. He said, "Oh yeah, you don't believe me?" And he did it again, stole the plane, landed it again in Uptown. This time they threw the book at him, got arrested. I mean, I'm sure he got arrested the first time, but they created this law that says you cannot take off or operate an aircraft from any of the 5 boroughs unless it's a designated airport. Isn't that something right?
Yeah, that's right. It has to be an approved airport or heliport or temporary heli stop. Exactly.
Yeah. So that law is what's preventing film permits from being issued for drone operations in any of the 5 boroughs in the New York area.
From the 40s.
Yeah, from the 40s.
Yeah,
a lot of people think it's 9/11.
Ever could have
classified as an aircraft for the purposes of this law and for many other things. And sometimes that's to drone operators' benefit, and sometimes it's to our detriment. I mean, drone operators sometimes think that they're protected if a farmer takes a shotgun at their drone because you're firing on an aircraft and it's now a felony and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
No one ever prosecutes that,
as it should be.
But that same law is the double-edged sword that keeps drones from being able to be operated in New York. And then there are certain workarounds for that sort of thing that John is familiar with, and a lot of people do. And it makes it legal, but it's still limiting.
Yeah, we could talk about it, I'm sure. Yeah, Thomas Fitzpatrick. Thank you, Winston, for hitting the Wikipedia up. I think it should be a feature film about this guy. He kind of sounds like a legend.
Someone I want to go.
But some of the workarounds.
Or at least a BBC miniseries.
Yeah, I mean, this dude was drinking at a bar, wins a bet, lands a plane, and oh my god, forget about it. But some of the workarounds include operating from New Jersey. Hey, it's a big state right next to New York. You get beautiful skyline shots. You can get film permits in like Hoboken and Jersey City, stuff like that, to shoot there. There's also Class G airspace and a lot of that, unless you fly over the Hudson, which I think I want to get to the Hudson exclusion zone with you a little bit later. But one of the ways that we successfully shoot New York City aerials is we rent a boat. So we charter an actual legit boat that we go out where we can fit enough room to safely land our drone, as well as fit production on there.
Not just like a 5-inch drone, but like a BFD.
Yeah, heavy lift drone or an Inspire, something like that. Like a boat that has a captain that knows the waterways out there. The currents are pretty nasty, so you kind of don't want to be out there in your buddy's like ski boat trying to make this happen.
Get it.
get a boat, get a captain that knows what he's doing. It's only going to cost you, a few $1,000s or whatever. I don't know, but that's the good way to do it. We haven't had any issues, shooting skyline shots that way, and certainly the police know you're there. And in general, just to throw this out there too, before I forget, with the technology, if you're flying a DJI drone in New York, it has the technology. I don't know if you guys know of DJI Aeroscope. Do you know that?
Oh yeah.
So it's a device that DJI makes that basically they sell to the authorities that allows them, as soon as you plug in a DJI drone, or I think there's a few other manufacturers on board now, it tells you the exact location of that drone, where it's flying, and where the pilot's position is. So if you're flying a drone, if you guys think you can just go to New York and get some drone shots or whatever, and no one's going to find out because you're tucked in some alleyway, there's technologies there to help authorities, counteract, terrorism and all that other stuff that they blame it on or whatever. But they will find you. That's for sure.
They actually tracked down how many different operators was it around the Super Bowl, because the TFR that was in place, the FBI had the aeroscope installations going on there, and one guy I think is actually getting sent to jail for that because he was flying a couple miles away and he swiped right past the warning saying, you're taking off in a TFR, and the guy had a 107 also. But he didn't care. He just did it.
Jeez.
So he's like willfully breaking the law there, and I think they're throwing the book at him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A lot of technology out there to help, I guess, mitigate drone pilots from going out there and filming, which I can understand both sides of the story a little bit. As a professional, I certainly want to be able to get access to fly in certain airspaces that are restricted. And I don't necessarily want hobbyists to be able to go out there and break the law unknowingly to do unsafe things. A lot of these hobbyists are flying beyond line of sight. They're just seeing how far their Mavic will fly. And I don't necessarily think that's like a safe way to operate, right? But as a professional, you kind of think that, hey, we should have these opportunities to film in these airspaces. But as of right now, New York City is a very, very challenging area to get permission from the city and then the state to fly in. So, but yeah, Mike, what are your stories about that?
Yeah, I think, we're starting to see this. I don't know if it's a merger, but this synergy where it's no longer like the helicopter guys are here, and then the drone guys are some lower budget thing here, and then if they want the cheap option, they go to the drone, and they want the fancy option, they go to the helicopter. Now you've got helicopter companies that also operate drones, and you also have drone companies that have partnered with helicopter operators. So you look at a company like Helinet. Helinet has been a massive force in the aerial filming world for a long time. And they actually...
where are they based out of? Give us a quick little rundown of Helinet for our listeners.
And they were founded by Alan Perwin, who is one of the huge names on motion picture flying. And he actually was killed in a crash several years ago during the filming of American Made with Tom Cruise. He was on a ferry flight back to the base in a plane, not during filming. They ran into some bad weather, and tragically he was killed on that. But Helinet is a massive force in aerial filming, and they also have a drone division. And Alan was also really interested in bringing drones into the filming world. And Alan, being a owner investor in Shotover, or I believe that was through Helinet, pushed Shotover to do development on the drone side. And that's how we ended up with the Shotover G1 gimbal, the small gimbal, as well as the U1 multi-rotor that they have, which is their beast of a drone that I've heard it can lift over 200 pounds. I don't know the truth to that, but it's truly an absolute beast of a machine because they wanted to dabble in both, and they operate all sorts of other aircraft now. You also look at companies like Pursuit Aviation, also out of Los Angeles. They recently merged with XM2. I'm not sure exactly what the business arrangement was there, but XM2 has a ton of experience in the drone world and motion picture filming, and they had a merger with the manned aviation side of things. So there is this coming together of these different companies and larger companies figuring that drones are not just some cheap budget tool, but they can really be a powerful force in the motion picture and commercial world to get shots you couldn't otherwise get. And the two platforms do really complement each other.
So kind of theoretically, we can understand like why drones and traditional aviation complement each other, but like in specific ways, where have you seen that be useful? Do you have like examples, good flights, good stories of when that's happened?
Sure. So
Or
in
terrifying stories.
Well, projects like the last one that I just wrapped up, there was no way that could have been done with a helicopter, where I'm going in by myself to knock out these shots, where we had to be in and out pretty quickly. We had to be fairly low profile in these different cities. And I needed to operate without a support crew.
Not just buzzing the tower.
So that sort of thing is perfect for a drone, where you can have a 1 or 2 person team travel in very inexpensively, all of your gears living in a handful of cases, and go in and get the job done and leave. Whereas with a helicopter, it costs a fortune to operate the machine. It makes a ton of noise. It takes several people to operate soup to nuts, where you're talking about a pilot, a camera operator, maybe another technician involved. And it's hard to sort of keep a low profile when you're doing that. So a job like I just did, there was no way a helicopter would have efficiently done that. But other projects where the payload is never going to work on a drone, you look at the 55-pound limit, that doesn't go so far in the cinema world. It doesn't go as far as we would like it to go. But when you get into a helicopter,
especially if you need to do like IMAX 3D or
that's I don't want to say that's never going to happen with a drone. I mean, it probably certainly can.
Yeah,
it might happen internationally. It might happen with overweight waivers, that sort of thing. But with a helicopter, you can generally bolt it on and go. And in terms of operating, let's just say back in the New York area, for that matter, you certainly can do drone work around New York City, and even on New York City land legally, if you jump through enough hoops. It can be done. You can buy out a heliport for the day and use that as a base of drone operations, or you can establish a temporary helistop, complying with the city laws, which basically means you file paperwork with FDNY, and you pay to have fire trucks on standby as though it's a helicopter landing zone. And it takes like 30 to 60 days or something like that to get that pushed through for your drone, whatever it might be. Let's, call it an Inspire 2. You have to bring out all this nonsense for that. But with the helicopter, we can, literally get a call in the morning. And if the equipment is hung on the helicopter, we'll fly over in the afternoon and we can film it. There's no paperwork, no nonsense. It's just turnkey, simple and straightforward because the framework is in place already.
It's simpler and more straightforward to use a helicopter. Costs $2.5 million worth of equipment,
and it's sometimes cheaper with
to put your Mavic 2 in the air.
Drone. It's crazy. It sounds counterintuitive.
I absolutely believe it.
Especially with my rates,
Well, I mean, it's to go all toward your hair gel, I thought, but for our system for a day, it's something like call it 20 grand to bring our team out for a day. When you go through the hoops for getting the permits to bring in a drone, the time it takes to do all that, sometimes it's cheaper just to bring in a helicopter. It's crazy, but it's how it works.
Yeah, I guess it's interesting. I guess another point that I want to make with the difference between helicopter and drone too. Do you get so when you hire Flying Monster to do a drone shoot, you're getting a full day's work, 10 hours of shooting. So in that time, we've had people pump out, we're shooting like 2 terabytes or like 4 terabytes of footage. We're just shooting B-roll going from location to location to location. How does it work with your schedule from a helicopter's perspective? Do you think you get more bang for your buck with a drone? Can you say that? Or is it different?
It's different. I mean, it's a good, valid question because you guys don't charge for electrons used during flight. You don't charge per kilowatt hour of recharging batteries, that sort of thing. Or at least I don't think.
Could we?
Maybe New Avenue, absolutely.
I charge that to the hotel the night before.
But we charge because we're burning jet fuel. So we bill at the 0.1 hour rate for the time the aircraft is running. because we've got these consumable costs. We've got these maintenance costs. You overhaul an engine on a helicopter, it's a couple $100,000, and you get a certain number of hours out of that engine overhaul. So you get the crew for a full day, but the helicopter, you only get the engine running for a certain number of hours, generally 3 or 4 hours on a project like that.
Right.
But the flip side is what we can knock out.
And that's not counting the rubber stamping for the FAA and engineers and everything too.
That's true. That's a little different part there. But what we can knock out in 3 or 4 hours of flight is probably at least as much as what you can knock out in a 10-hour day with a drone. I mean, it'd be interesting to look at and go back and forth on it. But we can stay in the air for over 2 hours. So we can efficiently cover a massive amount of ground. And also we're fully rigged between locations. So if you're doing a company move on a drone team, you're landing, you're packing all your stuff into the van, you're breaking down control stations and all that kind of thing. Then you get there, you unload, you set it all back up. We can be from our hangar to Midtown in about 8 minutes. And we can be, anywhere else in the city in under 10 minutes. So we
up in Long Island in another 20 minutes.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We cover so much ground in such a short period of time that you really do get a lot of bang for your buck. And when you're flying a heavy lift, John, let's say you're flying your Venice fully kitted out, and you're at like 54.9 pounds with small batteries on there. And it's, a breezy day, call it blowing 10 or 15 knots. What are your flight times going to be? Like 8, maybe 10 minutes?
7 minutes. Yeah. 7, 8 minutes. Yeah.
Yeah.
We're flying, just for all the nerds out there, we're flying 5100s, 4 of them at 12S. So 2 in parallel and then series, the other
10 M12S.
Yeah.
It's pretty incredible that you can even fly that package to begin with, which is fantastic.
Yeah. Yeah, it allows us to carry 33 pounds of payload under 55 pounds.
Yeah.
So what we got to do is make the helicopter the ground station and just fly drones out of it.
Yeah, we just get a cargo. We get a Chinook.
Land first, because you can't fly out of a moving aircraft. But
legally. Try it.
They said moving vehicle. Is that an aircraft?
No, I think specifically it calls out aircraft.
Takes all the fun out of it. Well, so
right?
You're 7 minutes to do that, but you're also subtracting the time it takes.
7 minutes in heaven, baby. That's what we say.
John only needs 2.
2.5.
But what are you getting out of that? The amount of time that you're actually filming and laying down real footage, and not just trying to scurry there and make sure your shot is set up and making sure everyone else is ready to go. Someone calls action, you get your shot. Okay, shit, we're down to 20% battery. Let's bring it home.
You're right, Mike. You know what? I just can't afford a helicopter. That's the reason. But you know what? But without getting a little into
with the helicopter, and it's a better tool sometimes to do that with the drone, but it's different.
No, I'm just kidding. I'm not getting defensive. I'm just pretending.
John
but
knows how to use his small package.
Yeah, little tools go a long way, baby. But we actually worked together a few months ago, and it was a really interesting experience. And what you just mentioned is kind of a great example of the benefit of a helicopter. So you guys are you guys are flying for 2 hours straight. That's something we can't do. So a little bit ago, we worked on a project together that actually we had a drone in the air and a helicopter in the air at the same time. And we experienced some of those issues you were just talking about as far as flight times and even as far as just getting different types of shots. Tell me about that project a little bit, please.
Sure. That project was a blast. That was for Borat with the new movie coming out from Amazon. And so Amazon, as a promo, put this huge inflatable sculpture of Borat wearing just a mankini that was a surgical mask covering his junk, and sent this on a barge up the Hudson River for the whole, New York, New Jersey population to see. And they
massive barge.
It was amazing. With
just do the rest of this story
too much
in a
hair in all the
accent,
worst places on this sculpture. It was pretty fantastic.
I should have worn my Borat. This is where I whip out the mankini right now. This is the part of the show where I unveil.
You don't have like the
costume
pants you can just rip off there.
We were all very excited to get this opportunity for sure.
Yeah, it was an amazing one.
But
They
yeah.
wanted to cover this, and the client also wanted to push out this promo material very quickly because they were doing the same thing in, was it London and Toronto, I think, a couple other cities.
Yep.
And they wanted this covered from the air. And to our benefit, they brought in both the helicopter side and the drone side to cover it.
The
And
best in the business.
one of the interesting things about this was, I think it was just the day before we were filming, we heard there's going to be a drone in the air as the helicopter side. We didn't know that before we, heard this little rumor going around. We were not so comfortable, of course, flying around.
That's when you roll your eyes like, gosh, the drone guys.
Yeah, exactly. Because
I mean, I would if I was in the helicopter. I wouldn't want a drone flying around me.
Oh, by the way, you might smack into something. Good luck. Have fun. So we were kind of wondering what the deal was, but it's a small enough community in the New York world that I don't know exactly how we figured it out between us. Maybe you had reached out to me or I had put out feelers or something, but you and I connected directly on it that we were the two companies working on it. And it was just really fortunate that it is this small world and we could coordinate independently of what the production had told us so that we could come up with a safety plan. And that was the really important thing because I had talked to our team and said, there's going to be a drone also filming this. And if we didn't have that connection together, the helicopter, we would have stayed above 500 feet. We would have been filming this thing all super long lens. It would have drastically changed our creative approach to this if we didn't feel comfortable getting down and dirty with you guys.
That's right. Down and dirty, baby. We were getting some really cool shots together, and that was because of the communication there. We had a bit of we had an approach, a coordinated approach together. So pretty much I would just stay out of your way. So I was piloting this drone. It was an Inspire 2. But I remember asking you on the phone, I was like, okay, so like, what's your floor going to be at? Are you going to be like above like 500 feet? He's like, oh no, we're going to be, 50 feet above the water. I was like, okay, copy that 50 feet. Yeah. So but it worked out.
Plan with it all. And the other important part was that we trusted you guys. And it had to go that way, that if we didn't have that communication with you, that we could talk to you verbally throughout the production and the trust that you guys are going to follow the plan that we talked about, we would have, approached it very differently. But you guys approach it professionally. We try to approach it professionally. And we were both able to play in each other's airspace without any kind of conflict. And that was a really important thing.
Yeah, we had some really... we had some fun, but it was very stressful. Most of the shoots are stressful, but like, I'm not lying about it being stressful. Okay. It's not like we can't handle the stress, but essentially, when you have the ramifications of coordinating and dancing in the air with a full size helicopter, it's pretty nuts. Not to mention that day it was pretty overcast. I think it was like 2 miles or 3 miles, like stature miles visibility or something like that. It wasn't a really nice day.
Well, hopefully at least 3.
Three stature miles visibility, gotcha. And then high cloud ceilings and all that.
Don't worry, FAA.
Yeah, no, it was good. But no, that was part of our like consideration there. It's because we were making we were texting even before we were going. How's it looking? How's the weather looking? Is this even going to happen?
Yeah, the weather was absolutely marginal that day. And we certainly keep safety margins for the helicopter, and it usually works out that you make a choice not to film because it looks bad before the weather becomes a limitation to the safety of flight. It's more usually a creative decision than a safety decision. As far as this particular project, the client wanted it no matter what. And I think they'd allocated the money already and they had the media buy in place. And they said, you got to try it. If you're safe to fly, we don't care how bad the weather looks. We want footage.
Yeah, we went for it. I loaded the drone up with strobes, typically used just for night work, but even during the daylight, I think I had like 4 external strobes on there blinking away, and I think that was really useful for you guys.
Yeah,
to spot
absolutely.
me.
And when we were orbiting the barge against you guys, it was really helpful that we could keep eyes on the drone the whole time, and we knew that we were in a safe place. And the fact that you had someone on the ground that we could talk to if we lost sight, we could say, "Hey, where are you guys?" And we knew where you were, rather than judging or second guessing. Hey, are we about to hit you guys? Do we need to climb and just sort it all out later? It was a huge thing to have the verbal communication. So that brings us also to the special flight rules area in the Hudson and the interesting limitations there.
Yeah, so we were playing in like the Hudson exclusion zone. Is that what it's called officially? I think.
Yeah, Hudson River exclusion.
Yeah, so which is an area you generally can only fly planes through. There's a lot of different checkpoints along the way as you travel along the Hudson River. In an airplane or a helicopter, you call out certain landmarks and things like that, like the clock tower and the Statue of Liberty and things like that, just to communicate verbally with other aircraft over radio. So that's the area that we were flying in, which is kind of a gray area for drones. Pretty much because we can't use a radio. We're not supposed to have a radio that we can talk on that frequency to other pilots. Like as a drone operator, it's like, no, we're not supposed to be able to do that. But in this instance, that was the way we were communicating, right, between the helicopter and the drone. Worked out.
And on that sort of thing, the issue is really like the FAA versus the FCC. And the whole not using a handheld radio to communicate, I think that's an FCC regulation that you get the radio telephone license goes with the aircraft. And if you don't have an aircraft that you're associated with and you don't have a special other license, you technically are not supposed to be using that radio to communicate. But the FAA, like you said, mandates that when you're in that airspace, you must use these reporting points. You must call out and be in two-way radio communication. So you're in this kind of catch-22 situation flying a drone in there. But at this instance, the safety of getting this project done overrides this FCC consideration, or at least in my opinion, it did. And that was the only logistical way to safely accomplish it.
Yeah. And I remember, feeling like looking downriver before we took off, seeing when this barge was going to be, in our line of sight visibility, being like, is that the barge? We were trying to get it in the air as soon as possible, but not burn flight time, because our flight path, the drone flies for, let's just say 18 minutes or so. It's an Inspired 2. It's an incredible machine. We use it a lot. You can send it very, very far, in relatively to, let's just say like 3,000 feet away in one direction. But so we're looking downriver, the Hudson River, 3,000 feet, waiting for this barge to come into our sight. And we see this little object on the horizon. That's when we launch the drone and take off. Next thing you know, we see Eisler's helicopter just diving down in, and we're like, that's definitely the barge. Okay, copy that. So, but before that, we were on the walkie, making sure that we were talking and stuff, like, in communication there. But our flight time, like by the time that barge got upriver, we had to land due to batteries, and then there you guys go, just continuing on filming. So
just out the window of the B3, just middle finger up, like, haha, that's right.
Exactly.
Gotta land for batteries. Yeah, they don't have batteries.
But one of the issues that we ran into was we tried to get really down and dirty over the barge and flew right over the top, doing this, awesome toppy shot on it. And we ended up downwashing this whole Borat thing and just setting this inflated sculpture flailing all over the place. I think we knocked some ropes loose, and we saw some like deckhands come out on the barge and start resecuring stuff. And that's something you don't really worry about with this drone. You can pretty much get in how close as you want. You're not going to mess it up. But
my safety position was literally, okay, like if I don't know, as much as we were communicating over the radio, I knew that Mike's pilot wasn't going to hit the barge. Okay, so if I positioned myself as close,
we
as I
hope
could
not.
to
I mean,
the
that's the
barge-
goal.
Yeah. Well, if I positioned myself in between, if I put the barge in between myself and you know what I mean, and the helicopter, that I was in a safe spot. So that was generally what we deferred to, and it worked out at the end of the day. So we got some really, really awesome footage. I'm sure we played it by now on the edit, but yeah, it was freaking awesome. It was like there was lots of adrenaline there after we landed. Another one we were like, okay, I was like, good to be done with this one. Like moving on, like done.
And our pilot was impressed too, and he said you guys were super professional, and we hope to do it again. I mean, it's one of those things where we went into it kind of unsure what the outcome was going to be, how we were really going to feel about it, you know, working in the same airspace. But we walked away saying that was great, that was really cool. Let's give it another go.
When in doubt, throttle out, right?
That's it.
And that brings
Well,
you guys
we
to
hope
the
you don't
next time
throttle
you
out
work
right up
together.
into us.
Yeah, no, I just go right into the river. Just send me down right in.
I wonder if a heavy lift would have enough thrust to get up. Like if you're coming straight through the downwash, probably not.
I doubt it. I'm sure
I
you've
don't
seen that
think
video
so.
in Hawaii of the was it a MD-500,
Oh,
the
yeah,
little
that's right.
yellow helicopter downwash, and I think a Mavic right into the water at that surf
Yeah.
competition, and everyone's like cheering when it gets downwashed down.
Yeah.
And it turned out that the pilot that
surfers
did that, I think,
hate
was
drones.
Don Shearer, and the local FAA office out there is like, nah, it's just Don being Don. We're not going to investigate that, you know, drone guy,
What?
dumbass for going there. Oh yeah,
That pisses me off a lot, actually.
Nurk,
As someone that's received a fine from the FAA,
Nurk has his stress ball in hand right now. Is that what that is?
it's earbuds, but yes.
God, a lot. Well, we did bring you on too for another major shoot that we had in 2020. That was the last week tonight shoot with John Oliver's season finale. We talked about it on the Good Flight podcast in season 2, I believe.
Our best episode, I think, until this one.
Yeah, our best episode. Yeah, there was a massive fireball explosion where we had one chance to film this thing. Guys, Mike was one of the cam ops on the cinema drone, and he did a fantastic job. What was that like? Because that doesn't happen every day. I don't care
that
what you're
project was insane, and I was so pumped to be part of the Flying Monster team on that one, just to be brought on such like an epic project where you've got this sculpture set up, call it what you will, this 2020 that's just absolutely massive, loaded with pyrotechnics, dozens and dozens of crew members there, and it's on our team to get this perfect.
Yep.
And we had four drones in the air for this whole thing.
Yeah, we had a bonus drone for these guys that they didn't
and
know
it turned
about
out that
until
they
the end.
used it,
They loved
that it went to broadcast, and it was amazing. And the angle that I was
that's the best.
working was cool. It was gentle. It was a safety angle, but it was cool. It was great. But the true hero of that whole thing is John's shot, just ripping the FPV through there. And that was absolutely badass. And the fact that that kind of thing makes it to broadcast and is making it into movies dovetails into the next thing that I'd love to talk about that brings all of this together, which is FPV.
So, as a
and
traditional
cinema.
aviation enthusiast, what do you think about FPV?
I think
we're getting a bit of a delay here. I don't mean to be talking over you.
Yeah, it's all good. I think we've got like a little 5-second delay, but no worries. I think
And I have another lead-in question. I'm sorry to interrupt you again with the delay, but I asked a lot of guests, like, I have this huge fear that FPV is a fad. It's something that is going to go away in the next like 3 to 5 years, like bell-bottom jeans. And like it'll come back here and there, but like I have this bad feeling that like I'm investing all of this time learning how to fly FPV really well and marketing myself as someone that can shoot for movies or whatever like that, and building all of these cinema drones.
world champion, dude. You'll never forget that.
Yeah, but at the same time, it's like, I also want to have a job for more than like 2 years after this. So I'm curious, as someone going back towards someone that's coming from a more traditional aspect of that, how do you see FPV integrating into the ecosystem of filming overall?
Great question.
That's
I think it's on a meteoric rise right now, which is awesome. And I think we're going to see a period in the next year or two where it's absolutely overused, and then it's going to settle in and just be accepted as a general awesome filming practice. And the same thing happened with like the Movi, handheld gimbals. When those came out, they were awesome, and then they ramped up, and then they were used in situations that they never should have been used in, and just absolutely thrown everywhere. And now they've kind of found their groove, and they're just another awesome tool in the filming process. So I think FPV's the same. It's really seen this huge rise, and it's continuing to have this huge rise in acceptance in mainstream filming. And I think it's going to start to get abused. And FPV is going to appear, everywhere. It's already starting to. Car commercials are really using it, and those are awesome applications for it. But it's going to start showing up so much that people are going to get a little bit tired of FPV, and then eventually, I think it's going to find its groove that it's just going to be an integral part in telling a story rather than a gimmick of we put an FPV just to draw in viewers. And there are so many applications where FPV is awesome, and it should be used in telling these stories. But it shouldn't be used just for the sake of taking viewers on a ride where maybe there's a better tool for it. Just like we were talking about drones versus techno cranes sometimes versus helicopters. I think it's got to find that balance.
I think I've said a few times that like I'm all for like gratuitous drone footage. But at the same time, if it's not advancing the story, if it's not helping tell that in a more powerful way, it's useless, right? I talk myself out of a job more often than I talk myself into one.
That's why I love you, Paul.
So, I mean, in furtherance of this, though, I think FPV work is absolutely the direction that drone filming is going on commercial productions, and I think gentle, high angle drone footage, it's not so exciting. It's I don't want to discredit any of the work that any of us do on these drone productions, but it's almost used as B-roll or play setter, or just getting a wide master shot to cut into handheld camera work or a drama that's shot from the ground. Whereas FPV is something that you're not going to get with any other tool. And it's absolutely engaging and mind-blowing at times in cinema, especially if you're looking at it in IMAX or other surround projection, throwing a super wide lens on there, a 12 or 14 millimeter lens on a Komodo, and just ripping it through tight spaces. It is mind-bending.
Yeah. Is that part of how you see kind of helicopters fitting in? Because I have to admit, I shoot a lot of boring B-roll for shows and stuff like that. Like that's kind of our bread and butter.
We do too. Absolutely, yeah.
But I mean, helicopters can bring the energy.
I feel bad that you guys are calling it boring. I call it permission to play, right? It is you have to be able to do these core set of things. They're important, right? They advance the story. You need a wide establishing shot for the most part to tell people this is where you are, and then it can advance into something that's more exciting or dynamic, we'll say, to use a really overused word. It's not boring. This is the standard, and now you're taking it up a notch. I think that's what I feel. Maybe.
Yeah, I mean they're all necessary ingredients in the recipe, but I think as far as the viewer goes, that drone shot or that helicopter shot a lot of the time is not a memorable shot in the story. And you're right, a helicopter can bring a ton of energy into it when you're ripping low level, you're coming close to things, and you can do the same thing with the drone. But I think we're seeing a lot more of that, and I hope we see a lot more of that done with FPV, and especially if things change in New York City, it's going to be a long time before we get a helicopter down in the streets of New York City. And they do that in some cities, and it happens occasionally in Chicago. They close down streets and they get a helicopter down below the building rooftop level. But if you do that with an FPV drone, you're bringing so much more energy than you even could with a helicopter there, and more than you could with a conventional drone. I think those are the really exciting avenues that we're starting to see.
Paul, what is your like ultimate, like you said you have this like fear, okay? What's your fantasy?
Oof. It's my fantasy would be to work with someone like oh my gosh, I'm gonna totally blank on his name right now. Freaking who shot Hot Fuzz, Baby Driver. Winston, cut this out. Edgar Wright. The director Edgar Wright, to do some, because he does these amazing like one take scenes where it's, you know, it moves from motion to motion to motion, and it follows usually some sort of like rhythmic process, and it brings you into a story by pulling all of this stuff into a one take. So like my dream, my fantasy is to use FPV plus like probably a Cindy lifter sort of thing to do that establishing scene where everybody just kind of sits and is like, oh my god, how the frick did they do that? Because that's the kind of stuff that inspires me as someone that likes to make content. So to take that to the maximum end would be to work with like Edgar Wright to make a shot like that, where it's, you know, 2 or 3 minutes straight of just one thing into the next, into the next, into the next. It's perfectly seamless, and it tells the story, and it introduces this moment. The scene from Baby Driver where he's going to get coffee, it stands out as like this perfect example of what that looks like. And that's my fantasy. That's like, you know, and that's something that I don't think a lot of, obviously, you know, it can be done, but, you know, you can think of that as like, you know, if you start from high to low to through to over to under to hand to catch to you know, something like that, where like, no, you know, where only you could imagine having done that with CGI is now possible to do in body. That's where the rubber meets the road for me. I think that's the end all be all for what a high performance drone could do. I don't even say FPV, I just say high performance.
Yeah, it's an interesting, you know, perspective, because you're talking about like a almost like a choreography, you know what I mean?
Yes,
that needs
100%.
to happen. And that's the hardest thing to create.
Absolutely.
Right? So you're like, everything leads into that moment, right? You're not just creating a moment for the sake of shooting something cool, but you know, that seamless like one take is what is like the red thread through the storyline, which like draws the viewer like closer to the emotion behind like why this character is doing what they're doing in the first place. So
I mean, that's why I'm so inspired by your Greatest Showman shot, right? Because it's this huge moment, this part that pulls the whole movie together, and it you know, you have to use so many different techniques and so much skill to get that whole thing together, that like, you know, that is what I want to be a part of. I don't want to just like have a shot somewhere. I want to have that skill required to achieve that shot, if that makes sense.
yeah, I mean, that was a special thing, because like, again, like they designed that shot like in their fantasy, like Seamus McGarvey, the director of photography, like designed that shot in his mind, then put it into a computer. Then they didn't know how to really do it in reality. So somebody, Anthony Jakes, was like, hey, this is a drone catch. And it happened to work.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That's how lucky we got to make that a reality. You know what I mean? It could have very easily been like scrapped on the cutting room floor, been like, okay, that's not going to work. Like, let's just do another quick, like 2 or 3 cuts in here and just shoot as individual shots, and we're done.
Right.
And we're moving on with the movie, you know?
So to further take the fantasy is that when people start to imagine those kinds of shots, they're like, oh, we need Tim or Jose Montoya's and you know, in Mike Eisler to pull that off.
Paul
we don't know how to do this. We have this idea. Bring them in.
Let's bring in the whole Good Flight podcast crew. Come on.
Yeah, exactly.
Bring them in. Winston, get in here.
Let's get the 18s.
That's my fantasy, is like, and I wonder, and this is a question kind of coming back to Mike, is once FPV kind of starts to level off, like you're saying, or to kind of like come back into like, it's going to overcorrect and come back towards like where it's kind of more, now it's integrating better. Do you see it being driven by the shot or by the operator? And this is an interesting question because like, so if you look at like, there's like 3 or 4 guys that do, the RE, whatever the crazy Steadicam rig is, and then there's like Fred North and Tim Orr, and then there's like, is that going to be the case? Do you think with FPV, or do you think it's going to be driven by the shot?
I think that's a tough one. It really depends on the project, but I think
right.
You're going to see these 3 or 4 top operators being very sought after. Absolutely. It's going to be that way. And it's going to be operators that have mastered the tools that someone else could pick up the same tool and not demonstrate the same competency. And it as well as anyone that it's not the gear that flies itself. It's the person that's doing the operating on it.
Right.
And it's the same way across the board on all these cinema platforms. And it's going to be really interesting in furtherance of that, where we see cinema drones and high performance drones going in the next couple of years. Are we going to see heavy lifters going away in favor of leaning more towards the FPV platforms we see now? Or are we going to see FPV platforms bulking up a little bit? And, there's always been the goal of making them fast and nimble and light and small while still flying the payload that you need to fly. But are we going to start to see things like adding a motor or 2 on the lens? You can do iris or zoom pulls or focus pulls, something like that. Or are we going to see a tilt axis gimbal to hold that level steady while you're accelerating? Or do you really want to feel that motion of being a hard mount? It's really going to be interesting to see.
It's funny you say that. It's funny you say that now, Mike, because that's like right where that's kind of right where FPV is at right now at the moment. I think this world of cine lifters, even since we've worked together last, I've built like 2 cine lifter drones that are made specifically to fly the red Komodo, and do all the acrobatic stuff like that. I'm partially because of like Nurk's tutorials on how to build this thing. That's how I've been able to build it. And like, I mean, there's like a few other like Andy Shen and Gab 707. Like there's a lot of people in the FPV community that are leading this front because there's this motivation to fly these heavier cameras. And those types of drones are powerful enough to have a focus motor and stuff like that. Maybe a small zoom, but I'm seeing now this convergence behind some of the level of GAC that is required to fly on our heavy lift drones now going into the FPV world. And it's interesting because not a lot of FPV people have the experience of working on set, or even like, why is it necessary to pull focus on, I don't mean to say it like that, but
let alone operating under pressure too,
Yeah, maybe
when the director calls action, there's a whole different vibe going on than when you're just flying around on a Sunday afternoon,
Yeah. Yeah. So I think we're kind of at this still. FPV is in its infancy stage to get to a level of professionalism to be on set, where my first cine lifter shoot was just a few weeks ago, so, and it was pretty freaking nuts, like flying a red Komodo down in and doing all this crazy acrobatics types of shots to get a shot that was inevitably for a short commercial, but like that was a shot that was designed in their head, and it was like very intense, for
My
me.
saving grace is that they're only going to use like 20 frames here and there.
They're
just like
half a second.
Just get a couple good moments. We're good.
Yeah.
It's out. We're out.
Get out of there. So get out of there with your head on your shoulders, right? Just like I said it before.
With drones in the air, and you didn't have to go collect pieces. You're good to go.
Yeah, and exactly. So, but I think drone technology is still it's so cool because FPV is such a community based group of individuals that are together. We're creating these new technologies and these new platforms to fly these cameras at at a higher level. Yeah. So that's happening right now, which is awesome to be a part of.
And I think the industry has a huge demand for it. And I certainly see that in the communities that I'm in on the cinematography side of things. Nice.
Nurk's showing us right now a Shendrone's thick with ducted props right there. That thing is the loudest drone in history right there. That's what I know about it.
Loudest drone you have ever heard.
His neighbors called the cops, almost, probably.
Yeah. I fly around my house all the time. And nobody bats an eye. Like,
God bless you.
Couple of my neighbors will come out and be like, have asked in the past, like, what are you doing? And I'm like, oh, I'm flying a drone. And they're like, oh, that's cool. Why do you do that? I'm like, well, it's my job. And they're like, oh, that's pretty cool. What do you do with that? I was like, I race them on TV. And they're like, oh, that's sick. And then the next time I talk to them, they're like, oh, dude, you crushed it that last heat on NBC. And I'm just like, yeah. So like they're on board, but it's so like they don't bat an eye when I fly a drone. And then like one time I take this drone off,
that drone
payload, like a test payload, and like literally 1, 2, 3 neighbors all poke their head out to be like, what is going?
Wow.
It was a minute flight. I'm like, I'm putting this down. This is not acceptable. Like, I totally get it. But like, my neighbors were just like,
it sounds like a siren.
They weren't even mad. They were just like, I just didn't understand what could possibly be making that sound. Like, is everything okay?
It's a banshee.
Like, my bad.
But it's that level of innovation though. Like you're making like literally like Paul and Andy are developing these air ducts to fly on that drone for whatever fucking reason, to fly closer to shit and like to get it done. And next thing you know, 1 year later, I'm going to be building my next drone with like that type of stuff on, you know what I mean? Like,
and going to be getting the jobs that I want to
get. What comes around goes around, right?
Right.
But yeah, so do you guys, this is like I guess a question kind of pushing it back towards the helicopter community a little bit. How are you guys innovating with technology, amongst your circle of peers? Because I'm not in that circle of peers, but I know you guys are dealing with like crazy shot overs. You guys are developing, I saw something on your Instagram you call like the hammerhead, where you have 3 cameras on a gimbal. You have 3 $80,000 camera bodies on one, gimbal where you're pointing and shooting. Like, is that your form of innovation? Like, what's going on in the helicopter community right now?
And one step further, I want to ask is, do you guys talk together? Do you work together?
Yeah, is there
or
a
is
Facebook
it like
group?
Siloed to where you're just like, oh, that guy, I hate him. Or, it's like...
There's a bit of both. I mean, there's a huge community in the aerial cinematography world. I don't want to call it a huge community. There's a tight-knit community that we have, and some of us bounce ideas off each other, and some of us are very tight-lipped about what's going on, and we're all competition with each other.
You gonna give any names out, or
not tonight?
Good answer.
But the hammerhead system that we have. It's a pretty cool system. Thanks for bringing that up. So for certain projects, you need really high resolution, and the resolution, you're going to get off of a GoPro. You're pulling what, 4K, 6K, was it 8K on the new GoPro, something like that.
4K. Yeah, no, 4K pretty much. 5.2K. Yeah. I mean, even the Komodo shoots 6K.
But at like a 50 megabits bit rate.
So
exactly. You're not talking about super clean, high bit rate.
I don't care about the K. My phone can shoot 8K. That doesn't mean it's a good picture.
Exactly.
Right. I'm looking at this photo on Gotham.film on Instagram right now. You guys check it out. It's freaking awesome. I'm looking at this thing called the Hammerhead. And tell me about it, Mike.
Yeah, it's a badass system. We can do 3 cameras at the same time. And when we do these 3 cameras at the same time, we take them in post, we stitch them together, and we make one super high-res video from it. So not only can we get, better quality than your average high-end 4K TV, but we can get something that's magnitudes higher resolution. So when we put in top of the line cinema cameras in there, we've got something that's shooting basically 100 megapixel images at 48 frames a second. So it's just
That's
this
pretty good.
massive, high resolution, glorious image that we get. And Hollywood productions want that for virtual effects, use VFX, background plates, comping, that sort of thing. And also TV manufacturers want that to show off how good the panels are. So if you show a video from like an 8K camera on a TV that can display 8K, it's not going to look as good as if you have something that was shot in more than 8K and you downsample and you show it on that 8K display. So our system is,
that's amazing.
As far as I know, capable of capturing some of the highest resolution in the world, and we can do that from the air.
Just to think, when I go into Costco and I'm looking at all these new OLED TVs, that Mike's video is on the background of all of them. It's pretty cool because they do look amazing.
It's great being a part of all that stuff, yeah. And the other cool thing is, we have some of these systems that the Hammerhead is based on, that we can put all sorts of different stuff in there. And that's what's also really cool about the equipment that we have for the helicopters, is that we're not always flying the same camera. Oftentimes a customer wants a different camera, a different lens, a different whatever. We can cram different stuff in there when we need to. We can put still photo cameras in there. We can put video cameras. We can put a video camera and a still camera in there at the same time and fly this all for 2 hours at 150 miles an hour and super stabilized. And we did a test putting a phase one in the shot over at one point. It was actually on that shoot for Matt Catalina that we were talking about earlier. And I know you were the first person to fly a phase one IQ4 on a drone. When we flew
phase one IQ4, first person to fly it right here, 150 megapixels on a drone for Royal Caribbean. Shout out to Royal Caribbean.
So we'll have to do a head-to-head test at some point, flying IQ4s and testing how stable your system is. Because we did a test flying this thing on a shot over, and we're flying back from filming offshore at the island at Catalina, and it's nighttime and stars are out in the sky. Helicopters ripping back over the ocean at 120, 130 miles an hour. And we take this gimbal and we point it up toward the sky, and it's dark. Crank the shutter way up to like a 4-second exposure and open the shutter and fire it. And image comes up on the computer. I've got the full resolution feed coming in, and I'm staring at like tack sharp stars from a 4-second exposure at a helicopter that's just ripping over the ocean. So we'll have to like put your IQ4 on a drone and test it out side by side. Let's see what it looks like.
Different tools.
I think Mike just said, "Come at me, bro."
Yeah, he did say that. But you know what? Different folks, different strokes. That's what I'm going to say. That also rhymes. But you know what? That's awesome. I mean, Mike, there's no doubt your helicopter's badass. Okay, like if I could buy that on DJI and get the DJI points, I would, but I can't.
It's actually on AliExpress. You just have to scroll a little further.
That's how you get it. Okay, let me go on AliExpress. But I think a lot of our listeners are tinkerers. I'm a tinkerer. I just built a drone today. I'm in the season of building. Okay, it's like winter time. This is when I'm building my future fleet. Okay. During this process, what?
Did you say tinkler?
Tinkler.
Oh, okay.
Tinkerer, dude. Anyway,
I know what you said.
You got to tinkle, all right? You don't have a 2-year-old if you don't tinkle. All right, so, but like
a 3-week-old.
In that moment, I'm building things. I like to build with my hands, okay? Because I think it's ultimately, I've realized what it boils down into is problem solving, okay? Talk to me about the problem solving. Like, I can't be looking at these looking at these pictures on Gotham Films of your gimbal, of your beautiful carbon fiber shot over gimbal with your $300,000 worth of cameras and lenses, and understand that that's like, I can't really relate to that. So talk to me about what it takes to like build that actual package out, designing these custom brackets, these cables, these different things to like actually make it work? Like, what does it take to make something like that work?
Yeah, I mean, some of this is like a big erector set. It's like a big box of pieces, and you usually have the pieces you need to make something work, but you got to figure out how to put it all together, and you don't always have the recipe to go by. So, like you said, it's tinkering. You just take this payload.
I said tinkling.
I'm sorry. So you're the tinkler. I'm the tinkerer. We'll just get that straight.
All right, copy that.
So, yeah, pulling out all these little pieces and trying to figure out how not only to fit this camera and lens and whatever else you're sticking in there, how to fit it in there, but how to keep that super rigid and solid. And that's how you get stable images. And it's the same in the drone world. It's not just putting a camera and a lens in there. It's making it really solid so the gimbal can do its job. So a big part of this is figuring out, like, how can you put this in there in the best way possible, hold it in place, and then balance it so that it's basically floating. And you don't want the motors to be doing any work. You want gravity to be doing the work. That's such an important part of getting a gimbal to work right. So we spend a ton of time figuring all those little pieces out, getting the logistics worked out so the camera package sits in there real nice. And then the other part of the equation to solve is communication with the camera, the electronic side. How do you record? How do you change different camera settings? How do you view it if the camera pumps out a kind of signal that you're not able to take in? So it's all this like whack-a-mole of problem solving that we play with. And the pieces are not always readily available. So a lot of this is hacking up cables and soldering on new connectors and putting little signal converter boxes in there and figuring out ways to repurpose something. When we were flying a phase one at one point, we didn't have the communication lines in the gimbal for triggering the shutter on the phase one the way that I wanted, but we did have Ethernet running through the system. There were 8 copper conductors in there, and it's got RJ45 plugs on either end, so it's Ethernet. But we figured out to talk to the camera, we could talk at 100 megabit, and you only need 4 of the 8 wires to do that. So I could use these other 4 wires to trigger the camera and do some other things, and you just hack up these custom cables and like work around creative solutions on these kind of things. It's, what we do on the drone side also, because you're given these cameras that are not made to fly
that's
on
how
drones.
That's how you triggered your phase one. That's how you triggered your phase one with a custom cable like that.
On the IQ3 we did it that way. It changed on the IQ4. We had a little different methodology. It got better on the IQ4, but on the IQ3,
let me tell you how I triggered my IQ4. Okay, this is high tech stuff here. Okay, because this method 100% works. I'm using a servo attached to the S-Bus receiver on the back of the movie, and I plug it into a channel. Boom. That servo touches the top of the shutter button, pushes the button. I attached that servo with Sugru glue, which was a sponsorship of mine in 2019. They no longer are, but I love Sugru glue. Servo pushing that button worked great. So I guess it's kind of the same thing.
S-Bus relays, though, right? The was it Battle Switch makes one. I've used those in the past where you can plug them right into S-Bus, and you just get a contact closure, and then you get a off-the-shelf shutter release cable, like from phase one. They have a little clicky button one. Snip the end off, you hook it into the Battle Switch relay, and you assign that to another channel on your TX. And you go,
nope, haven't done that. Just made it so it presses the button on the top of the camera. That's what I did. Damn it.
It's crazy.
Well,
either way, it's problem solving, really. Yeah. Oh boy. Here we go. So
yeah, it's problem solving. That's what it is. It's the same on drones and the helicopters, and we've built a lot of custom pieces to do things that have not been done by anyone before that we know of. And sometimes we're the only ones doing these things. Sometimes people figure out the way that we do it, and they do it themselves. But it's
I guess you just got to get it done. at the end of the
That's
day.
it.
Yep.
That's it. And it's not always
I love the idea
such a
of
clean
whack-a-mole.
solution. There are often field fixes that involve, unsatisfactory,
A little bit of
unsightly
electrical tape,
work
a
under the
little bit of
hood. Yeah,
gaff
electrical
tape.
tape, duct tape, gaff tape, whatever it might be. But if it works, that's what matters.
I love the Sugru personally. That's my shout out to Sugru. Hashtag sponsorship of the Good Flight podcast. Sugru, potentially. Okay. I guess to wrap up the show, I just want to make sure that, Mike, there's not anything we're missing in our conversation. I feel like you're a wealth of knowledge to explore.
I'm enjoying it.
Okay?
We could talk for another couple hours if I didn't have a kid sleeping downstairs.
I think Nurk's about to pass out. I don't know.
Yeah, that's part of my problem. I only slept a few hours. I'm only sleeping a few hours a night right now with the newborn.
Nurk's got James over there just kicking him every few hours, making sure, hey, Dad, like, are you up? Are you up too, Dad?
Yeah, it's both James and my wife. She's like, hey, can you get him this time? Oh, okay.
Man, well, I just want to make sure that there's no other stories that you want to talk about. Like, maybe let's think about and like,
or we could always cover the rest of the stories when I come back as a repeat guest on the
season 4. Are you talking about season 4?
Drag it back
we
up.
just started season 3, Mike. We're not about to start season 4 yet, but
you got to have some ambitions.
I guess we could line up season 4, but
we should do the follow-up episode from the helicopter in New York City on like an H3 zoom and just like kind of record it all together and talk about what we're seeing and test
badass.
the camera. I think that'd be
sick.
I like it.
I don't know how much it costs in jet fuel to go fly for like an hour, but
I'm sure Mike
could be
a
sacrifice.
Yeah, he could whip you up a quote in a matter of minutes. That's for sure.
Send me your email. I'll bang it over.
Yeah, all right, sounds good.
But Mike, what are some other locations you guys are like filming at? Like, I want to know some other. I want to hear real quick about some other stories about you guys operating in the helicopter world. Okay, like where are some other locations? Maybe it was like on top of mountaintops, or like you mentioned before on Everest, or like what are some other extreme scenarios or other extreme circumstances that production has kind of put you in where you guys triumphed? Do you remember?
And are you bringing your helicopter there, or do you just borrow one once you get there?
That's a good question. It depends how far we're going, and there's always a cutoff line. And so I see our range expanding on bringing our own helicopter places. We're working on something for that. But if we're
you have
going,
to ship it at that point, right? You can't just fly it.
You can truck it.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Yeah. So say you had to do a shoot in LA, you wouldn't fly it across the country. You'd just ship it, right?
And places like that, there are so many helicopters there that are easy to get, and it's a small enough community that if I'm in LA, I know who to call. I'll call up and say, hey, we need to rent your helicopter for this.
Okay, but what about lunch breaks? What do you do for lunch break?
Lunch breaks? We don't get lunch breaks.
Come on, man! You got to land. You got to go to In-N-Out in LA. When you're in LA, you go to In-N-Out Burger. You come back and you eat. Is that how it works?
In-N-Out is actually right next to LAX, which is perfect. We can just put down there and zip right over. We'll be back in the air in 10 minutes. Yeah.
See, he's figured it out.
I have actually landed a helicopter in the parking lot of a Waffle House before.
Get the hell out of here, dude.
Oh, it was great.
Get out of here.
We just stopped in for breakfast. Yeah. You can get away with that some places.
Paul, I can't hear you right now.
Dang it. I was saying that sentence ended with such a high and then ended with such a letdown. It's like, we landed a helicopter at Waffle House. Like,
but that's what it's all about.
We landed a helicopter on the White House lawn.
No, you got to have the juxtaposition. It's just an absurd use of an expensive tool to get the cheapest garbage food you can.
We took a helicopter through McDonald's drive-thru. That's how you get the clicks, my friend.
Great French fries. Yeah, but tell me about those stories real quick. Where have you been? Like, what's some crazy locations you've been in the world?
Sure. Just recently, I guess just over a year ago, before COVID and all that hit, I was down in Argentina, and we were working with Airbus helicopters that manufactures the kind of helicopter that we have, as well as a whole bunch of other really nice helicopters. They were trying to set a world record for the highest altitude landing of a big helicopter. and they have a helicopter. It's called the H-145. Use it for medevac and all sorts of other uses like that. It's pretty damn big in the back. It, I think, can seat 10 people or so, depending on the kind of seats you put in it. And they wanted to land this on top of the tallest mountain outside of the Himalayas, which is Mount Aconcagua. And it's 22,000 some feet. So they brought our company in
This is part of Patagonia.
to the filming. It is outside of Patagonia. It's a bit further north, but it is in the Andes. It's the highest mountain in the Andes. And it's actually right near where the movie Alive took place, and the story Alive, where the plane crash full of the soccer team turned into cannibals. So that was just down the street from us, basically. But that's a different issue there. So they wanted to film this landing on top of the mountain there. And there were some tough considerations there because the winds are absolutely ripping. The mountain is at 22,000 feet, which is pushing up into the jet stream. So the mountain is sitting in at air currents that can be ripping at 60, 80, 100 miles an hour just on an average day. And then the other thing is when you take a helicopter up that high, it's not pressurized. It's not like a jetliner where, you're breathing with normal comfort. When you get above 13,000 feet, you're needing supplemental oxygen to function and have total cognitive senses there. And the other thing is that weight becomes a huge issue. So you lose performance. It's like any other flying platform. The more weight that you have on it, the less well it performs. So when you get up into the really thin air, weight is a huge issue. So we're taking all of these unnecessary things out of the filming helicopter. We're taking out the first aid kit, because if something bad happens, you're not putting a Band-Aid on it. You've got bigger problems to deal with. So we're saving a couple pounds there. We're taking the flight manual out of the helicopter, because if something bad happens, you're not pulling out a book and flipping through,
because you already read it
for it.
Yeah.
Because it's on your phone.
It's on your phone.
Exactly. Well, whatever's in that book doesn't matter at that point. And we also had to have the pilot and camera operator on board, and that's it. That was all that we could take for weight. And we got about 25, 30 minutes of fuel. And we were able to successfully film the landing on top of the mountain. But it involved super careful flying around the wind. You cross over a mountain ridge and you go from 20 mile an hour wind to 100 mile an hour wind, and you just get your ass kicked. That was a really logistical, tough one. And the other things that happen there, you're going from 60-degree weather at the takeoff point to, temperatures below zero up at altitude. So cameras freeze up. Yeah. All sorts of bad stuff happens, but it worked.
Wow. Jeez. That's amazing. Any other tropical locations? Tell me about the times you spent on the beach real quick. Because it can't be all high altitude craziness. Hawaii,
cold weather. Sometimes there's warm weather. That's right. Yeah, I got to Hawaii not too long ago. Was working on the HBO series His Dark Materials, and we were doing VFX work for all of season 2 that's now out. So we took our shot over from New York City, and it comes apart and travels in about 6 or 8 Pelican cases. I took it over to Hawaii, stuck it on a local helicopter there, and we had the best pilot in Hawaii flying us all around Kauai, getting absolutely stunning, gorgeous scenics. And it's such a unique environment to fly in there. The way the canyons are just these deep V's, you take the helicopter right through the bottom and you just feel absolutely immersed in it. And that's almost like the FPV world. And you can get away with that in these remote areas. We don't get to do that sort of thing in New York City so often.
That's where Jurassic Park was filmed. I mean, that's where,
that's right.
Great films Coast. Like Tropic Thunder was filmed. Yeah. Boom. I mean, absolutely. Unbelievable. Kauai, that's what you said, right? That's where you were, Kauai. Right. So I was actually there, I guess about a year and a half ago. I went on vacation there, and I brought my Mavic 2 with me. I had a hard time because of how big that space is. I had a hard time really moving the drone fast enough to capture any type of parallax or sense of like scale with that drone.
Interesting.
That's got to be a tool for the helicopter. I was like, if only I had a helicopter to dive down into this space, right? That's got to help.
Yeah, it's just such wide expanses that you really do need that ability to move the camera fast and to move the camera over a ton of ground. And that, we can go 100 knots and the drone is only going to go about 40 knots. It makes a huge visual difference. And also the lenses that we can put on there, we can compress stuff up and we can fake that kind of speed. And we can fake that energy through telephoto compression that you're not able to do the same on a drone.
That's a really good lesson. I think it ties it into the fact that we just need to find more productions to work both helicopters and drones and FPV drones into these shoots, because ultimately flying cameras for the win, I think.
Absolutely.
So
the ultimate socially distanced filming tool.
And I think the next time we record should be when we're all on set together, working in 3 different aerial filming departments on that production.
Yeah.
Ooh, I like that. We can each have our own easy up tent where we just say,
I want my own motorhome. You can have an easy up, but
I only needed one of those little like hunting blinds.
Paul has a porta potty. I have an easy up. Mike has his own trailer with his helicopter limousine thing in the back.
He's got a hanger.
Yeah, he's
got my
name
on the door.
Yeah. Well, I guess I know where it stands at the end of this conversation. I know where I stand. It's not that bad. It's not as bad as Paul with his FPV, like night terrors that he's having with, afraid of, but ultimately though, it's an amazing tool. Flying cameras, I think, are the future for, unlocking the freedom and the potential of the creatives. I think that's kind of the common thread that we've had throughout our conversations. And I don't know, Paul, do you have any other questions?
I want to give Mike a chance to kind of, roll out the red carpet, give you an opportunity to pitch things that you got going on, whether that's socials or projects that are coming up. What can people be clicking on to go find out more information about you and what you're doing?
Yeah, I would say keep an eye at Gotham.film. We're always putting new projects up on there. Can never talk about projects that are up in the future until they drop. So there's always interesting stuff working. But our company's working on some new ways to move the camera, not just in the air, and also looking into different partnerships with doing stuff outside of helicopters and maybe in the drone world as well, because it really expands the things that we can offer our clients. So I think this is a top to bottom integration, like we said, of moving the camera, and it's stupid for any of us to pigeonhole ourselves into one area of it.
I like it.
So all of his information, all of those Instagrams will be available in the description on YouTube and the whatever you call it on the podcasting platforms. So please go check him out. I've been scrolling through a lot of it during the podcast, and it's just straight video porn. It's amazing.
Paul, what do you got going on other than James, obviously? But come on, pitch.
What else is going on? We just did a shoot with Mark Rober, the YouTuber. That was really, really fun. So you should definitely check that out. And we're just kind of starting to get back into the swing of things after the baby. So we're starting to put out more content, get things rolling again on that front. Season 3 of The Good Flight is starting now. So
season 3, officially season 3. Yeah. That Mark Rober shoot was awesome. Like you were flying, you were on the football as it was being kicked. That was pretty badass. That timing. What was that like, dude? Tell me about that. I haven't talked to you about it yet.
Well, maybe Winston wants to tune back in, but so me and Winston were kind of tag teaming it, where he would kind of watch the kickers and get their cadence right, because they have their own kind of like routine pattern, especially when they're bombing it from like 65 meters. These are football place kickers kicking field goals from 65 meters, which is a big field goal. So Winston would kind of learn how each of the kickers took their kick and how what the timing and the rhythm was for them to start and kick it. And then he would time that against the drone coming in and what speed I was moving, because I would keep ramping up the speed to figure out how fast the football was going to be coming off their foot. to the point where we eventually got a few great shots where like literally I'm 5 foot away from the football the entire way from foot to field goal. And we got some pretty amazing shots that we're really, really happy with.
Yeah, that's badass. I guess what impressed me most too, and maybe not everybody, but was how close to the net that you got to pull out of that.
Yeah.
You held on to to like the last moment possible before to hit that net. Like I could just see it. You were just like holding, and then like bail out of the shot.
Yeah.
You know, that was pretty.
Well, what I didn't show was the 2 times where I got it stuck. So
but no damage, right?
No, not at all. Yeah, I flew away.
You guys used to at DRL. You guys used to like finish into nets like that, right?
We still do.
You still do, baby. So there you go. Yep. It just takes a little bit of time and energy to get it out of there, I imagine. But
yeah. What about you, John? What do you got going
on? It's been a really interesting year so far. 2021, new president, a lot of new things happening. Not to mention anything political, God forbid. But yeah, the Super Bowl. Mike and I think before this podcast started, we talked about we both worked on some Super Bowl stuff. I had the privilege of being a part of the team that shot the opening shot of the Super Bowl halftime show. So that was really cool. So I'm pretty sure they said like 1 billion people see that live. So the odds are that you guys have seen that shot. It's with The Weeknd as he walks out of his convertible thing, and it morphs into this pullback shot into the stadium. We shot the stadium portion of that, and it was really, really special. And it's just like super stoked. That was actually like the second Super Bowl thing I've ever done, and it was just like another one of those like wow moments where when you're watching it. You just realize how like incredible it is of an opportunity to get to try something like that and get it done. So
opener of the Super Bowl. That's pretty
halftime
cool.
show. Yeah.
Halftime show. Yeah. I got a commercial, or I had a couple shots in a commercial last year, but no, not the opener of the halftime. That's pretty amazing.
There was a lot of good drone stuff, like out there, and like I think the future is bright for people in this industry. So if you guys are out there and you're trying to get involved, or you're considering, if you're listening to this show and saying like, hey, I feel like this is a future for me, do it, because all three of us have been sitting in that same exact seat before, and you got to make the opportunity for yourself. And I think that's like one of the special things about like the Good Flight podcast is like trying to encourage people that, through our stories, through our journey, through our struggles, our trials and tribulations, you can actually get it done yourself and get some ridiculous shots in your favorite movie too one day, for whatever that's worth. But,
a lot.
Yeah. So
it's awesome.
All right. Well,
cool. Well, thank you so much to Mike Eisler for joining us and talking both about himself and Gotham Filmworks. It's been a pleasure having you on to talk about what is definitely a very unique aspect of the filming world overall, and especially from the perspectives that we come from. So thank you again for your time tonight.
Well, thanks, Nurk and John. It's been awesome chatting with you guys, and it's rad hearing, the way that you see things going forward, and the way that we're all jiving together and we're all working in the same playing field, and everything is changing so quickly in this world. So it's amazing hearing your perspective on it.
All right, Mike, season 4. We're looking forward to having you on, dude.
I look forward to it also. Thanks, gentlemen.
Thank you, man. Right. Take care.
See ya.